Okay, so we are good to get started. So I just want to thank everyone again for coming today to learn more about the HS2 Accelerator program. This is our second intake, so it's very exciting. And just first of all, I'd just like to introduce you to who I'm joined by today. So we've got Andrew Pestana. He is the Innovation Strategy Manager at HS2. We've got Robert Cairns, who is the Innovation Manager at HS2. You've got myself, who is the HS2 Program Manager at Bruntwood. And we have Alice Johnson, who is the Head of Accelerator Programs at Connected Places Catapult. Just some housekeeping for you guys. So the chat box here is unavailable, but if you have any questions at all throughout, and at the end, we will be having an open Q&A session. Please do use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we will answer any questions that you guys may have. So just first of all, if I can hand over to Andrew, he'll be covering the first few slides.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can all see me and hear me. Thank you for joining us today. I think there's over 90 of you on the call, so really excited about being able to present the HS2 Catapult to you. Jazz, if you can move to the next slide, please. So I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time as I'm sure you all know who we are as HS2, but just a very brief recap for you. So we're a line infrastructure program running from London, Euston up to Birmingham, and then splitting and going up the western leg to Manchester and the eastern leg to Leeds. There's over 345 miles of track. And HS2 will run on existing networks serving towns and cities, existing and new networks servicing new towns and cities in the northwest and northeast and Scotland. And ultimately, HS2 will connect over 30 million people in 8 of our largest cities. So that's just a very brief recap for you on HS2. If you are looking for more information or want to understand a bit more, there is information on our website, so the HS2 website, but I think you can also look at most of the information sources such as the internet, written press, etc. Jazz, if you can move on to the next slide, please. So why is innovation important? And I won't take a huge amount of time up, but I think it's very important as startups and small and medium-sized enterprises that you understand why we at HS2 innovate and what the need and requirement is for an accelerator. Innovation for HS2 is delivering benefit and value beyond industry best practice. We focus our strategy around 3 core areas. So that is to drive innovation into the design and build of the program. There's to innovate in the railway operations and class-leading customer experience. And ultimately, it's about leaving a legacy of knowledge, expertise, and new commercial opportunities for the UK. And I very, very much see organizations like yourselves being a key part in this legacy piece and how we as HS2 can contribute to creating this legacy for UK and global organizations. Next slide, please, Joss. So, as with all major infrastructure programs and innovation strategies, there is a need to focus our energy and our effort around specific key challenges. There's a recognition within HS2 that although these challenges or opportunities are the most relevant at this point in time, we continuously evolve and evaluate the needs of the program and the UK as a whole and address these based on those needs. So for HS2, there are the 4 key areas of environment, productivity, customer experience, and process. The first cohort, which we have successfully recruited for now, focused on the environment and productivity. If we can move on to the next slide, Jazz. This cohort, which is cohort 2, which you're all dialed into today, will focus around the customer experience and the process and ways of working. For us, customer experience is critical to the overall success of the program. I think we as a program will be judged on the future customer experience, and often people will look at us on the first day of operation and realize that, we need to deliver a service that meets the customer's expectations, and customer experience is critical to the outcome of this opportunity. The second is around process and ways of working. And there's a clear recognition there's a huge amount of opportunity from a process and ways of working that we can deliver benefit and value for the program. I'm really excited to be able to see the organizations being able to apply to these two challenges for Cohort 2 and really see these organizations coming through to fruition and delivering us benefit and value. So, as I said, that was a very brief introduction to HS2. I think you're all here today to really focus on, well, what is the accelerator and what it offers. I now hand over to my colleague, Robert Cairns, who's the Innovation Manager for HS2.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you, and thank you for joining us today. Just to give you a brief appreciation for why we have launched the HS2 Accelerator program, what's involved in that, and the sort of, I guess, the take-up that we've seen from Cohort 1. So we actually see that more than 50%, nearly 70% of our innovation portfolio is being driven through work, projects, research with SME organisations. We traditionally would fund that work via a cohort forming with one of the joint ventures, either on our main work civils, enabling works, or stations contracts, for example. So direct SME engagement is really key and core to the lifeblood of innovation into HS2. It allows us to operate more with greater agility, so that we're able to accelerate innovation, excuse the pun, and really grow the SME organisations so that they are fit for purpose for HS2 as a client and our ever-growing supply chain. And the complexity and size of the project, HS2 is the biggest infrastructure project in Europe. It is touching on all of the main contractors and supply chain in the UK. So we are very keen to grow the capability of SME organisations to, one, benefit the project, and two, leave a lasting legacy of new ways of working and solutions that the industry can benefit from. And we have some quite clear routes for enabling that to take place. I3P is something that we co-chair and is very much the industry working group focused on route-wide and cross-industry and sector opportunities for infrastructure. We've also currently onboarding a high-class calibre of project partners to support the SMEs and to support the Accelerator programme alongside HS2 Connected Places Catapult and Innovation Birmingham. Those partner organisations have contracts with HS2 already and are leading in their fields. So they will undoubtedly add some real value to the SMEs that we intake for Cohort 2 and for Cohort 1. And finally, on the benefit side of things, so we have some very high-level strategic goals to work closely with SME organisations to return economic growth, and to try and find new ways of working that can contribute to that legacy theme that I referred to. But ultimately, we are a project. We need to deliver to time, cost, and schedule. So they are always key drivers for us, alongside customer experience, safety, and environmental change. Just to quickly touch on some FAQs to cover off, that we saw some common questions. Any IP that's generated as part of the accelerator remains with the SMEs. Equity remains with the startups and SMEs, and we can put in place HS2 non-disclosure agreements made available if required. And there are also no fees for joining the accelerator program. I'll now just cover some of the challenges that we're looking to address as part of Cohort 2. Challenge 1 is very much focused around HS2 and infrastructure processes, the way we work as an industry, the way we work as a project. It's a very manually intensive industry. There's still lots of paper. There's still lots of manual solutions and ways of working, which presents huge amounts of opportunity to automate and optimize processes as efficiently as possible. So the 3 challenge topics that we've identified here relate to process automation, process optimization, and reducing manual operations. We've got a fantastic case study on the Accelerator website that clearly shows how you can benefit from this type of technology with the Accelerator program. And the example that we've showcased relates to archaeology. Archaeology was a very manually intensive process. It was something that could take a number of months to complete. And the archaeology is really running to something that is it's the biggest dig in the UK. So we worked with the SME involved, and we were managed to team up with them and fully digitize that process. That SME is now working with all of the joint ventures across all of the project. And so we have fundamentally changed the way that archaeology is processed on HS2. And that was quite simply, we provided some iPads, some GPS technology, and we were able to digitize that end-to-end process. We saw some huge efficiency savings and huge CapEx savings associated to that. So if you've not seen that case study, I would recommend just visiting the Accelerator website to take a little look at those opportunities there. And we are primarily focused on efficiencies for the construction process. So we're not necessarily focused on the operational railway. We are still very much focused on a collaborative approach to the construction process. The next challenge that I'd like to talk to you about is around our stations experience. We very much operate on a stations for all approach and strategy to delivery. One of the bugbears I'm sure that everyone on the call has experienced when you walk into a train station, you need to understand what time your train is going to arrive, what time it's going to depart, do you have a delay, and the common image of foyers in stations around the UK are people looking up at the board to understand what time their train is going to leave, even when they might already know what the departure time is. So our stations director is very keen to support some work in this space to evidence the capability and prove some solutions to put our passengers in control of their own time in our stations, so that you can really understand when you arrive, before you arrive at our station, how long you've got between the real-time arrival of your train versus the real-time departure, how much time that leaves you to navigate around the stations and take full advantage of the retail and commercial opportunities that will be certainly surrounding these world-class stations that we will be building. We'll be building 4 stations at Euston, Old Oak Common, Birmingham Interchange, and Curzon Street, and they will be world-class leading stations. Part of the Stations for All strategy is to ensure that everyone can access the stations and move around our stations as easily as possible. So we have a primary focus by our EDI team to look at how we can support those who are blind or partially sighted and have neurodiverse customers to move around our stations at ease and have information available to them, have support available to them, so that it is no different from anyone else that wants to use the station. We've seen some quite cool technology in this space, AI, AR, VR, those type of solutions. We very much recommend looking at the end-to-end customer journey in this space. Before you leave your house to arrive at stations, when you're actually at the station itself, when you're boarding the train, when you're departing the train, and when you're returning to your end destination. So please think about the entire end-to-end journey for the customers. Again, if you were to visit the Accelerator page, I'm sure you've already seen some of the designs for the HS2 stations. They all have slightly different approaches and slightly different needs to those stations. So that's worth considering while putting forward your proposals. And then just finally, to summarise before I hand over, with regard to applications for the process, I would just ensure that we have more tailored offerings that are fit for purpose for HS2, less open design solutions, and we want to try and move away from a feel that has consultancy or wider offerings, and really understand what your SME organisations have to offer to the programme, to the industry, because that helps us understand how we can tailor our business support and growth to your respective companies. So thank you for listening, and please use the Q&A for any questions. I'll now hand over to Jasmine.
Thank you so much for that, Rob and Andrew. Really great to get some insights directly from the HS2 innovation team on kind of what we're looking for and why this program exists. Just to start off with a little bit more about the program itself and the offering of the program. You may have seen, obviously, one of the main partners in this program is Bruntwood SciTech or Innovation Birmingham. They have space at the Innovation Birmingham campus, which comes as kind of part of this program. It is non-mandatory, but it is a brilliant community which we would definitely recommend that you guys get involved with. There's lots of digital SMEs, plenty of technologists on site. It's 24/7 access, and the best part about that whole package is the Serendip program, which they run at the campus, and there's lots of opportunities for you guys to get plugged into that as part of the HS2 program as well. Events, workshops, showcases, and kind of other development activities which you can definitely take advantage of if you were successful. Just moving on now to how to apply for the program, now that we know a little bit more about the challenges and kind of why it exists and what we want out of it. So the deadline is Friday next week, Friday the 18th of September. And the eligibility criteria is that you must be a UK registered SME. So you can be internationally based with international headquarters, but as long as you have a UK registered company, then you are eligible. And an SME in this example is under 250 employees or under 50 million euros turnover. We are looking for TRL 6 and above, and just to get rid of some jargon there, what that essentially means is that you have a validated prototype with real world pilot testing, so kind of a real life demonstration that it works, that it's validated, and really now you're on your kind of commercial journey trying to scale that up and to get kind of lots more active commissioning of your solution. A digitally enabled innovative solution for the program, and commitment and willingness to engage. And then probably most critically is that your needs and requirements align with the offering of the accelerator program. So in the following slides, I will go into a little bit more detail what that offering is, but it really is critical for us that we're able to add value to the SMEs that are successfully selected for the cohort. So ensuring that on your application form, you really kind of deep dive into kind of how the program is going to help you based on the offerings would be really important and a big piece of advice that I'd recommend. Just to cover off some of the key headings on the application form, on the right hand side here we can see that the main chunk of it are these 4 questions. So you've got the challenge, which is the description of your solution and how your solution addresses the challenge. As Rob mentioned previously, we want really specific use case examples for this, not just kind of a overview or a very general solution. Try and make it as relevant as possible to the challenge that's been outlined. Specifying who your competitors are and how you differentiate from them, so how your product differentiates and how you as a company with all your knowledge and expertise differentiates from your competitors. Your team, so your current team size and capacity, your current experience and skill sets, and any plans that you have for growth or recruitment in the near future. And then finally, just looking at your revenue and finances. So just clarification of what your revenue model is and any details of market traction or commercial progress that you've already had. This again is really helpful in understanding kind of where you are in your journey and potentially how we can support you on this accelerator program. Just moving on to the selection process. So this is kind of cutting edge, to be honest, with what we've been doing. We've been being extremely diverse and inclusive as part of our selection process. So there might be some, if you've read through the application form already, you might see some slightly strange requests on there, but I just want to go through it in a little bit more detail. So essentially, we're really dedicated to ensuring that this is as impartial and unbiased as possible. A blind selection process essentially means that the panelists that receive the applications for the first shortlisting round, they will not see your company name or your logos or your name. And what that allows is us to essentially ensure you're only assessed on the merit of your application and how you've answered the questions, not bringing in any biases at all about what they may or may not have heard about your company. This just ensures that we are being as inclusive as possible and just removing any bias, as I said a second ago. So as a result of that, on your application text and pitch deck, if you could redact and remove any reference that you've got at all to your company name, your gender, your age, ethnic background or nationality, that would just be really helpful in ensuring that we can continue this blind selection process throughout. And just to make you aware as well that the diversity questions that are asked on the Innovation Birmingham website, they are not used in any way to assess your application form. They're purely for statistical purposes and allow us to capture kind of the types of audiences that we're reaching, and just ensuring that we are being as inclusive as possible. Just to go through the process with you, it's got this lovely timeline just to visualize it. So as I said before, the deadline for applications is the 18th of September, so next Friday. We will then begin shortlisting the week following that, so the 21st of September. After shortlisting using that blind selection process, we will then invite the shortlisted SMEs to a technical assessment on the 15th of October. This is essentially completed by Connected Places Catapult's tech teams, and I'll go through in a little bit more detail what those kind of key competency areas that they're going to be assessing you are. And then if you get through to the technical assessment, you'll then also be invited to the final assessment, which takes place the week after on the 21st of October. This is now coming from a more commercial point of view rather than a technical point of view, and we would be joined by HS2, some key tier ones in the supply chain, Connected Places Catapult, Innovation Birmingham, Brentwood. So you would have a very large consortium panel that would be assessing your presentation and your technology. Again, this just ensures that we have engagement at all levels, and it is really brilliant to see that we are able to engage the tier ones, because again, these are key decision makers within the supply chain that we want to ensure are engaged and are interested in the technology that gets through to the second intake for the successful SMEs. Then we would have Welcome Week, which is essentially an induction week for the successful cohort, just to get a little bit more of a taster of what the programme looks like, to meet everyone, and yeah, to meet some key people at all organisations as well as external organisations. At the moment, because of the situation with COVID, we are expecting this to be virtual, as with our current cohort, which starts Welcome Week next week. Everything is likely to be virtual for the time being, given the kind of unprecedented situation with COVID. You would then have a 4-month programme, which I will go through in a little more detail later on. And then you would graduate on the 22nd of March, which would have a big demo day showcase, just to really show kind of how you've progressed from the beginning of the journey, and just to get you kind of really exposed to some key corporates, tier ones, investors, and other people within the ecosystem. It's just a really good opportunity to kind of lift your profile a little bit. Going into the technical assessment, as I mentioned before, these are the 4 main competency areas that you will be assessed on. As I said, it's Connected Places Catapult's tech leads that will be assessing your solution. This is done in a very kind of informal one-to-one scenario where you would essentially pitch to us, and then you would complete some Q&As alongside the tech leads. And the tech leads are going to be chosen based on the technology you're presenting, so they will be relevant to your technology and able to ask you the most relevant questions. These these are, the viability of the solution, how viable is your solution to meet the needs of the challenges that have been presented, and what's the feasibility of it? Is it likely to work in this setting, in this use case? And again, the scalability. So how can we get this product, which ideally is TRL 6 or above, and scale it up massively? Can it scale up to this commercial application? And then in terms of environment, it's those external factors, things like policy and legislation, how they may implicate the long-term success of your solution. The final assessment, as I said, this is the kind of more commercially focused one with a much larger consortium of panelists. They would be covering off these key competency areas. So moving away from the more technical side into the business and the commercial side. So your team, traction that you've had, market and competition, product, business model, financials, investment strategy, exit strategy, and kind of the problem that you're addressing and the solution that kind of comes as a result of that. So that's the competency areas that we look at. And I do just really want to highlight as well, as I said before, we use an extremely transparent, measurable process for selection. It's no just qualitative, feedback. We use an actual scoring system. So you'd be scored out of 220 marks across both rounds, and the highest scoring SMEs would be the SMEs that would get through alongside any feedback that is presented with that as well. So it is extremely transparent, it is extremely measurable. Just going through now into the programme overview in a little bit more detail. These are the key kind of modules that we'll be covering as part of the programme. And on each slide, I'll just go through them in a little bit more detail. So first of all, we've got one-to-ones with HS2 and the supply chain. So this is actually a really unique offering as part of this program. And again, it really taps into that engagement piece with the key decision makers and the key kind of components of the HS2 supply chain. So you would have in your first few weeks, you would have one-to-ones with the key stakeholders at HS2 and tier ones to really refine those challenges. So obviously we've got kind of two main challenges that are broken down in a little bit more detail, but this would allow you to have more of a conversation and really drill down exactly how your solution is going to address that challenge, really refine what it is that they're looking for your solution to relieve in terms of pains. In terms of challenging assumptions, again, this is a big element of assumptions you might have made about the systems they already use, the technology they already use, and assumptions that you might have made about their needs and the pains that they feel. Again, this is a really good way to have a conversation with them and just make sure that your technology really is positioned to deal with the challenges that they've got and the pains that they feel. We would then obviously have a process of capturing those requirements and ensuring that it was really clear exactly how you were going to deliver the solution, and then defining the deliverables off the back of that. And I'll go into a little bit more detail where those deliverables go on the next couple of slides. So another big element of it is the investment readiness and growth strategy. So not only, of course, are we introducing you to the HS2 supply chain because you are addressing HS2 challenges, we also want to support you as a SME, as a business who is aiming to scale up and grow. So part of this process involves introductions to strategic investors and lots of mentorship and expert workshops around topics such as grants and funding, IP strategy. So how can you really drive commercial value from your IP and not just, hold patents for the sake of it and things like that. Identifying and building strategic partnerships, navigating procurement. And again, this is a really big barrier I think a lot of SMEs feel, especially when they're dealing with much larger supply chains like HS2, how they navigate procurement rather than doing kind of one-off bespoke sales here and there, how they really get embedded in the supply chain. And then pitch development. Ensuring that you know how to pitch, that you're a brilliant public speaker, and just kind of fine-tuning all those details. I don't think many of us really enjoy pitching, so it's a really good opportunity just to kind of hone in and fine-tune those skills. There will be opportunities for investor roundtables and pitch events, so being able to again have a more kind of informal, free-flowing conversation with key strategic investors on kind of what your growth plans are and how they can potentially help you. And then of course that kind of big event at the end, demo day, just to showcase. Again, that would of course involve lots of investors, lots of corporates, lots of people and stakeholders from the ecosystem that your solution fits into. So again, you can raise your profile and hopefully we can instigate some growth there as well. Just moving on now to the technical sprint. So this is where the deliverables I mentioned with the one-to-ones kind of feeds in. So the technical sprints are essentially support from Connected Places Catapult's tech teams, where we can help you to deliver the deliverables set out in those one-to-ones. So we have masses of expertise at the Connected Places Catapult. You know, just some of these topics here, you know, data science, AI, IoT, economics and human factors. So even looking more so at that user experience, that customer experience, lots of different modeling expertise and kind of finances and economics as well. So any support that you need in terms of achieving those deliverables laid out in the one-to-ones, we will absolutely be there to help you with that. And we have about 5 working days with each SME laid out in the plan. Some other little things to mention as part of the program, of course, as I said before, the whole aim of this is that we help you to scale up, we help you to realize some real commercial opportunities and help your business to grow. It's called an accelerator. Of course, we want to accelerate all of that. So as part of that, you'll also be invited to attend other kind of workshops and expert sessions, such as, you know, marketing, team development, economies of scale, HR and recruitment, and sales and business development. So you can really kind of upskill yourself and learn a little bit more about how you can scale up your business. Getting onto the kind of more critical thing now, business development, ensuring that you are able to get in front of the right corporates and the right large enterprises. Again, obviously, introductions to HS2 supply chain is brilliant, but of course, we want to introduce you to as many potential customers as possible once we've got your solution fine-tuned technically and you've kind of gone through a lot of the growth strategy and investment readiness elements and modules. We would instigate pitch days and one-to-ones with any of your target customers, and you would also have a dedicated in-residence business mentor to provide any expertise and support that you may need. Just to clarify as well, this is an extremely bespoke program. We're quite lucky because we have such a kind of small cohort of 5 SMEs. It really allows us to have a very one-to-one conversation with you about what your needs are, who your target customers are, who your target firms are, you know, who, if you could get anyone in a room, who would it be? These are the kinds of conversations that we have with you in advance of the program starting, so we can really shape it to be as bespoke and beneficial to you as possible. We really want to add value where we can, and leveraging the networks that we have at Connected Places Catapult and Bruntwood and Innovation Birmingham and HS2 means we can tap into some of those networks to get these people in the room, to hopefully drive some commercial opportunities for you guys as well. Just to talk a little bit more about some past successes, I suppose it's a success story. We have run the Intelligent Mobility Accelerator for 3 years now, and we are on our 4th cohort. So just to give you an idea of kind of what you can expect and what kind of benefits have come out of that program. You know, we've worked with 29 SMEs as part of that so far, and they've raised almost £40 million of investment between them collectively. There's been over 30 commercial trials undertaken, and plenty of CR&D funding as well. So these are the kinds of this is the kind of benefit and impact that we want to deliver similarly through this program, just obviously with a far more greater focus on HS2 and really embedding you into that HS2 supply chain. And just to do a little bit of a shout out for the cohort 1 winners, these were the winners that were selected from the latest cohort, and as I mentioned before, they are starting the program next week, so it's very exciting. The companies here are BuildDots, who is addressing the productivity challenge, Nature Metrics, who are addressing the Green Corridor challenge, Cloud Cycle, who are addressing the circular economy challenge, Dendra again on the Green Corridor challenge, and Sensat on the productivity challenge. So feel free to do a little bit of research about these companies. So then just finally to summarise essentially what we're trying to achieve here with the programme. So just tapping into that a little bit, of course, we are trying to develop investment and commercial opportunities for the successful SMEs. We really want to facilitate and promote collaboration, again, getting the HS2 supply chain involved as much as possible, getting you guys to work together. And again, if you are willing to come to the Innovation Birmingham campus, there are so many digital SMEs based there, as well as myself and potentially other SMEs from cohort 1. So it'd be great to have you guys there as to collaborate and to be together and create a little community. Another element is that we of course want to provide sector specific expertise. We aren't just trying to recreate a very generic accelerator program. This is very focused on construction and infrastructure. So of course we want to try and drive home sector specific expertise where we can, so you really find value in your own journey with the kinds of experience and knowledge that we're sharing. We want to enable UK SMEs to enter and grow within the supply chain, as I mentioned before. And of course, we want to unlock and expose other opportunities for innovation for large enterprises and corporates. I mean, this is just the beginning, but the kind of blue sky thinking, this could unlock so many new opportunities, not only for HS2, but for other large scale infrastructure projects. And really, it could set the bar for the future of these kinds of things. As Rob mentioned before, we really do want to become a legacy in new ways of working and new ways of delivering infrastructure and construction. Just finally, just want to thank you all for coming, of course, and now I will take any questions. They will be fielded out to whoever's best to answer them. So again, just a reminder to drop anything down in that Q&A box below and we will go through them now.
Great. So first up then, first question. I think it's one that was already covered, Jazz, in your part of the presentation, but we have a question. If you do not have a currently registered UK address, is it possible to apply on the basis of establishing a UK office on approval to the programme? The answer to that, the short answer to that is yes, but I'm not sure if anyone has anything else to add. I will answer that now. The next is, could you, I think this is in relation to challenge 1 and Rob's part of the presentation. Could you tell us what the business processes that you are looking to improve efficiencies on are, the ones that you're looking to consolidate within that challenge?
Yeah, sure, Alice. Yeah, great question. So we've got a very broad scope. There is so much opportunity. There is so much redundancy in the infrastructure and rail processes, to be honest. And some of those will be split between the contractors. Some of those will be split between the client. So as a client, HS2 is about 1,600 people. We need to, we will be recruiting some figures of 30,000 people across the duration of the program. We procure and let and manage lots of different contracts. And then we also assure we validate assurance against the work's completion. So there are some processes associated to those techniques that are very client specific. If you look at what the supply chain are delivering, there's been a great graphic presented on the HS2 social media channels recently that gives some scale and context to the amount of materials we need to excavate involved in earthworks and movement and logistics. Tremendous amount of opportunity in the processes and paper and manual steps involved in those areas, as well as environmental reporting that relate to the surveys that we need to conduct along the route, the GI, the huge amount of GI that's going on between phase 1 and phase 2, the amount of concrete and steel that we'll be using and the classification of those. So it is a very broad remit, I'm not going to lie to you, but that is quite purposely because there is so much opportunity to go at. By launching a broad challenge, it allows us to really focus on those SMEs that can probably deliver the biggest value to the project.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, and I suppose just to follow on from that question, really, there's a question about, why are we recruiting different systems for, I think this is in relation to the different challenges, so different solutions for each challenge as opposed to a few which could manage the needs within a few single systems, and why are we committing this sort of investment really to supporting smaller businesses to grow? So what's the thought processes behind that?
So I think we're doing both. We look at, it is a very complex, big beast. It's going to run for 20 years if you could consider phase 2 as well. So yes, there is, we are exploring route-wide, consider it group activities. We're also, like I said, innovation we see as the lifeblood of working with SME organisations. So to fundamentally make a change, they are key to the delivery in that space. There are more system-wide approaches that are also in consideration and they're going through procurement activities. but it's a blend.
Yeah, Rob, if I can just add to that, I think there's a firm commitment from HS2 as a programme to support SMEs, so small and medium-sized enterprises, and leaving a legacy for the UK PLC. So, if anything, that is one of the key drivers for us as a programme. The second is, we manage innovation as a portfolio, and there's a clear recognition that with a portfolio approach, there will be successes and there will be failures. And, anyone that's been involved in innovation, for a few days or a few years or a few decades realizes that innovation is fraught with failure. So we need to create a approach that looks at the ideas that have the biggest potential benefit to us as a program, but we can't put all our eggs in one basket, for want of a better description. This is about looking at where we can help develop and look for value across the program, and that may be multiple solutions. We also consider, when we're looking at some of these solutions that are presented to us, what are the synergies between those solutions, and whether there's opportunities to collaborate and deliver value.
Thanks, Andrew and Rob. And just to answer another question that's come up here, to say, is there only 5 SMEs admitted for the cohort? The answer to that is yes, but really to balance that as well, is, as Jazz mentioned, that allows it to be a very bespoke programme to focus efforts on those 5. Answer that question. Got a question: what kind of information would you be looking for in the pitch deck?
I can answer that. I'll move back to the previous slide that I used for the final assessment, because it's probably a good example of the kinds of things we would want you to cover there. So touching on elements of all of these essentially in the pitch deck, just as you would for any kind of potential customer pitch or investor pitch, we just really want to know elements of all these things, a little bit about what the product is, how it addresses the solution, what your current team is and your business model, and really I think quite critically your traction that you've had and how you differentiate from the market and the competition. If you can bring in elements of that as well, that would be really important. I think that's mostly it. Alice, is there anything you'd want to touch on?
No, I think that's a really good overview. I actually also have another question about the TRL 6. There's a couple of questions actually here relating to that. So what stage exactly does it need to be at? So we've obviously mentioned that Frontward helps with a lot of the workshops, and the program helps with development. So does it need to be fully developed, in use, or part developed? Where just to clarify, the TRL 6 bit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, essentially it needs to be a validated prototype. So it can be part developed. There can obviously be elements of your development pipeline that you have not addressed yet. As long as it's been used in some way, piloted, deployed, or trialed with a commercial entity, I think that's kind of the key thing. It's a usable product. I'd say MVP level with a pilot is potentially a good benchmark to look at.
Yeah. So some traction, but still some room to grow is kind of so. And just moving on, we've got some questions. We've got an interesting question here about: is there a in terms of the challenge 2 and reducing end-to-end journey times? Obviously that's a goal here, but is there a conflict there between retail opportunities and on the stations, or is it actually about finding solutions that help to kind of to do both?
So you don't need a ticket to access HS2 stations. Our stations are open to local communities. If you just visit King's Cross and Birmingham New Street, there are good examples of how they become hubs of the regions. So there are stations for all. Andrew, anything you want to add to that?
Sorry, I was just trying to get back online. I think, the vision year is ultimately where we can deliver benefit and value to the whole customer experience. So if you take it back right to the fundamental root cause of, or the root of the challenge, this is about people and making the journeys less stressful, but equally giving them a degree of delight when they're entering the future HS2 stations. And this is about both de-stressing the potential journeys within those stations, but equally de-stressing the whole journey as a whole. And the stations become, like Rob says, a place for people to congregate, for people to travel from. It becomes a hub of the communities, a social hub. So whatever we can do to encourage and make that experience far more stressless and beneficial, it comes into it. And yes, retail will come into that in some way, shape or form, but equally it's about that whole journey experience. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thanks, Andrew and Rob. I have another question from Claire, just asking, do you run any workshops for micro businesses or startups that could do with some advice on how to get started on their ideas and products, as they wouldn't qualify for the programme, as too small at the moment, but would need assistance? I'll pass that one to Jazz, I think.
Yeah, of course. So you wouldn't necessarily be, as you said, you wouldn't be eligible for the HS2 Accelerator programme, but as I mentioned before, the Innovation Birmingham campus, there is the Serendip programme, so you'd be more than welcome to apply to that programme, which offers a lot more support in terms of, getting your business from a startup to a scale up. Also, just to kind of plug Connected Places Catapult as well, depending on how early stage you are, if you've got kind of a proof of concept idea, it's been validated to a certain extent, but you don't have a prototype yet. Again, if you reach out to Connected Places Catapult, they'll have lots of initiatives on that may be of interest to you, to help develop you, and even things like collaborative funding, workshops and events and things like that you can tap into to try and get you where you need to be. And then of course, when you're where you need to be, you can then tap into things like this program.
Thanks, Chaz. And a couple of questions around the scoring matrix. Just a bit, can we talk through a bit more about how the scoring matrix will work and the weighting, and also how many submissions were received for cohort 1, and how many made it through the filter stage? Do we expect that to be the same for cohort 2 as well?
Yeah, do you want me to take that, or do you want to cover that one?
Yeah, so we had 109 applications for cohort 1. And we took 20 through to the due diligence stages. So that's the short answer to that question. And we really score across the 6 areas. Can I count?
8.
8 areas, sorry, that you mentioned there. And as Jazz mentioned, you know, the whole total scoring for the due diligence stages is out of 220. Each area is scored out of 5 equally, so there's no particular weighting to any one. And another question about the application, we mentioned that competitors should be listed on the application. Should these be hidden on the blind review document? I would say no. It's more important that, you know, the kind of name, gender of the company, all of those details are hidden. But I'll pass to the panel in case they have anything extra to add to that.
No, I agree with that, Alice.
Now another question more specific to the challenges. Would there be any monitoring technique, such as structural health monitoring or railway assets monitoring, that could be considered for this call? I'll pass that to Rob and Andrew.
So the primary focus of the call is related to support the construction and build aspects. There probably will be later cohorts that will focus on infrastructure maintenance, asset management activities, and how we can support the operational railway. So they may be more appropriate in this space.
Yeah,
but it is something from an innovation perspective and a HS2 perspective we're very interested in exploring. So if you are interested in exploring, just come and have a conversation with us.
And I guess a follow on from that, in the ways of working challenge, does that cover, we're looking at kind of construction planning, for example, help with efficient project scheduling, and that's very much something that is on kind of the radar, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. So Obviously, there are the sort of the feasibility aspects of where we are in the stage of planning, and for phase 1 in particular, we've had notice to proceed, so they are starting the build activities. However, there still is opportunity to optimize and innovate the plan, schedule, and delivery. So yes, the short answer.
And also the areas of digital security. Is that something that we would be considering in the future?
Yes, absolutely. It's still a consideration for now, I would suggest. You know, we are in the process of capturing lots of data. Data security is going to be key. So if you can improve the efficiencies there, then yes.
I think if you, I guess from my perspective, if you think you're on the borderline of yes or no, always go yes and apply. I think the reality from this perspective is that you get your name forward and we're able to evaluate your idea against the specific cohort requirements. But equally, as stated earlier, we will look at all the entries and see if there is opportunities for us to explore further, even though those ideas don't necessarily meet the requirements of the specific cohort. So I think, you know, err on the side of putting your applications in would be my suggestion, and you know, ultimately that could lead us to having conversations outside of the accelerator if you aren't successful, and there have been already instances from cohort 1. So yeah, long story short, but get your applications in.
The questions are coming in thick and fast. So just, I guess, another follow on from that, there's a question around, you know, does this challenge 1 also relate to document management, change management, supplier management, or design data? So I think we've kind of covered that. And also another question around, you know, if in terms of testing prototypes in stations, is this something that we will facilitate through the programme? So opportunities to test products.
I think from our perspective, again, we've clearly got a shuttle operator on board. So the West Coast Partnership is the future operator of High Speed 2. They're also the incumbent operator of the West Coast Main Line. So that gives us some real access to real opportunities to be able to test out station technology and stuff around stations. There's also pre-existing relationships between HS2 and the likes of Network Rail and Transport for London. So, you know, there are plenty of opportunities there. I don't see that as a barrier at all.
Great. And just in terms of the application itself, should the pitch focus on just one product? Can it include detail and further ideas for additional products which are less mature? I think it's good to show a kind of future, your sort of future trajectory and the thinking around that would be my answer to that. I'm not sure if anyone has anything else to add.
I think if you want to go, Rob, shoot.
Oh, I was just going to say, don't try and boil the ocean.
Yeah, but focus in on the critical product offering.
I think from my perspective, it's about being able to show a line of development for your core product. And if those additional products or solutions are a sort of maturity of your existing idea, then yeah, spot on. But as Rob says, don't try and boil the ocean. I think that if you throw 10 different ideas at us, it's less likely that we will be. It makes things more challenging. Let's put it that way.
And one for Jazz, I think. Will the introductions to other corporates and large enterprise be just within the rail sector, or will this include related sectors?
Absolutely. So again, as I kind of said earlier, part of the the program being quite small in terms of the 5 SMEs in the cohort, is that we can have a conversation with you. So whether it's kind of you know, the kind of big construction corporates or JVs that you want to meet, whether it's the rail sector, whether it's local authorities or transport operators, transport authorities, kind of whatever that is, that's a conversation that we have. And because of the kind of vast reach that our networks cover, with Connected Places Catapult covering all realms within built environment and transport, and then HS2's offering within construction and rail, we really can tap into quite a lot of networks. So whatever sector you're looking to kind of expose yourself to, we can absolutely do our best to facilitate.
Yeah, just to add to that, I'd say you know, the exposure that this program should present should be at a global level. This will hopefully unlock industry-wide across continents. So we are very much looking to support that growth strategy for businesses that are applying for the program, make you investable and to a global scale. Great.
And just 2 kind of more practical questions. Does each application need to answer each subtopic listed within the challenge? Which the answer is no, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
Yeah.
And when including the team in the pitch deck, do they need to be anonymous too, as per applicant company details? Yes, please, if you can keep just those details out, but just kind of capabilities and experience is kind of what we want to see there. Okay, moving on. There's kind of a question around Rob and Andrew around the kind of innovation process. Is there any documentation available regarding the internal innovation process? And you know, how are you looking to maintain industry best standards of innovation over the next 20 years? So how do you keep up with current technology?
I think from, are you there? Sorry, I was just checking that I was on. I think from my perspective, what we've put out on the open sort of market is available to everyone. I think at the moment, if you are successful as part of this accelerator, those are the conversations we will delve into when you come through the cohort. I think that the process of innovation that lies within HS2, more than happy to have that conversation, is probably not for this audience at this point in time in the open platform, but and that's not about being disruptive. It's more about we haven't got the time now to be able to go through that strategy and that process. So please don't see that as me sort of trying to hide things from you. We're more than open to discuss how we approach innovation, and you know, more than happy for you to reach out to us and happy to discuss that offline.
Great, thank you. And a question around you know, what happens next after the program. Do HS2 contract directly with the entities, or will there be commercial contracts via intermediaries such as prime contractors? I'll pass that to Jazz would like to answer the question.
I didn't mean to kick that. I was just moving it into the answered section. So it's probably best for Rob and Andrew.
I did wonder.
I think that the aim for us is to be able to mature you as organisations as being mature and viable options for our supply chain. I think, you know, very clearly they are ways that we need to consider how this is taken forward into the future. But if you consider the main point of, we are trying to mature you as startups and medium-sized enterprises so that you are viable options and mature enough to be able to be taken up within our supply chain. We can't make any commitments as HS2 to procuring you at the end of this program. The commitments we make is working together with you that you are a viable supply chain option for our contracting landscape. I think the reality is, by being in the cohort and being in the accelerator, you get access to these organizations and potentially run proof of concepts or demonstrations. Also, the sort of graduation or demonstration days, you will have numerous members of our supply chain as well as people outside of our supply chain, and access to those organizations.
Yeah. So there's a couple of questions about how do we reach Andrew, you mentioned that they could speak, people could speak to you afterwards. Is there a way that we can circulate some information to all attendees after the event, or Andrew, is there the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so we can circulate it to all attendees, but we've got an innovation inbox as innovation@hs2.org.uk, but we will supply that after this call.
Great.
If for that, Alice, if anyone wants to make contact, if they go via yourselves or Bruntwood, then come to ourselves. And
then there are all of the emails there on that last slide there, just first point of contact. Question around NDAs. We mentioned, I think Rob, you mentioned on the call that we are able to put an NDA in place, so that one's been answered. Will there be digital advertising screens in the stations? There's another question we've had. I think that's quite.
I would imagine so. I don't think necessarily that is at the level of stage of detailed design within the station build yet.
I think,
Andrew?
it's not for us to define what that looks like at this point in time. I think that the world's our oyster in that respect. So is it digital display screens, or is it something else? And I think we have the real ability to go beyond what is considered best practice. So the challenge is out there. If it isn't digital screens, what is it, and what can we contribute in that space? I think it's early enough in our development cycle to be able to consider some alternative solutions, and this is about us pushing the boundaries of what is best practice.
Great. Another question around solutions. So would contractor performance and risk management be within scope for Cohort 2? I think we have answered that, but I'm just raising that in case. And then I think that is pretty much it. There's a question around are there any mixed fleet telematics platforms and safety reporting for machines at the moment? It's a very specific question. I'm not sure if that's quite something that
so the different contractors are probably at different stages. I know that some have procured some solutions, some are developing some, but they will all be at different stages. But there will be feeds from the different suppliers that are working on the project. And I think if you look at the different contracts in different regions, they probably all have slightly different relationships within their supply chain.
Is interoperability a key consideration for partnerships between tier ones and tech companies? Is another question.
Sorry, could you repeat that? Alice, I broke up.
Sorry, Andrew. Given that a number of tier ones have recently announced big partnerships with tech companies, is interoperability a key consideration for how you might work? I imagine that question is in relation to different companies.
Yeah, so great question. And I guess it's a hard because there are so many and there's so many different solutions across the challenges. It may be a case by case basis. The approach from a integration perspective does change from contractor to contractor. However, they are trying to be as agnostic as possible to transfer solutions from one to the other. If you take our standard innovation process, then we would try and de-risk an innovation with one contractor so that the rest across the route can benefit. Normally that is the use of APIs and so forth allow that to be a interoperable solution, and it does depend on the infrastructure that they have set up in place. But I'd say majority of the time, they can pretty much link into whatever they need to via APIs.
Yeah, and the very last question, I think anyway, this is I guess more of a technical question, but is there any consideration for PLM software, so project lifecycle management for all data consolidation? I'm just throwing that out there, so I think we might have covered that, but I'm just...
I'd just be really clear on what the innovation is there.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're not after a sales pitch as such. We're after some sort of what gives us above and beyond what is currently out there in the marketplace.
Great. And very last question then. Where do Andrew and Rob get their shirts from? That's come through.
It's HS2 corporate branding. No, please don't. That isn't true. We don't get any corporate branding, but yeah. Thank you for the compliment.
There's just one more that's come in around, can you access the recording of this following the live stream? So we will be sending the